Good evening and welcome to Neal Hartman. Thank you for joining us in this lesson with our master students. This is one of the meetings that we are organizing with different institutions lately with the master. We already talked with other directors of museums and galleries, and we follow with Neal Hartman, that is the actual director of Venice Science Gallery. So this will be a really special introduction because Science Gallery is a wonderful project that Neal will explain you better than me, for sure. And it's a completely new project that is about to be built in a real building in Venice in the next future. We already did with the gallery and with Neal and with Erika Villa a workshop in January, an hackathon that we called Acami. That we did in Iuav with students coming from Iuav University and Ca' Foscari. But today we will talk about what means for Venice to have an institution like Science Gallery and what will be possible to do hopefully in the future. Now we are a little bit slowing down because of the situation, but we really hope that in the future will be possible to develop and see a lot of projects happening in the gallery. Neal Hartman is a mechanical engineer coming from CERN in Geneva, and he became the director very few time ago, right? In November.
Well, in fact, in January officially.
January actually. Yeah. So it was a short time to experiment to be a director in Venice, and then we had the lockdown, but the start was good. It was a good start in working together and trying to collaborate. So we hope that the beginning was a good luck for the future. Unfortunately, we will wait a little bit more to start properly. So as I said, I will let you introduce yourself, Neal, and tell about your story and your first beginning with the gallery. We will have also Erika Villa later that she will join us and she is the head of communication and programming for the gallery. And yeah, that's it. So welcome, and
thank you.
I'll give you the...
Great. So I have in the chat, just for everybody, I've uploaded a PDF of the presentation. There's only one video in it, which I will show kind of towards the end of the introduction part on Science Gallery Venice. So I've sort of broken up the presentation into kind of two parts. So we're going to start with a general introduction. Oh, hi, Erika.
Hi, Erika.
So Erika's now joined us. So I'll start with an introduction to Science Gallery Venice and with a little bit about what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. And then we'll spend the second part doing a little bit of a brainstorming session where we want to actually hear from you in this master's class what you think about a virtual gallery implementation that we would like to be putting into place in the very near future. And so we want to get some kind of focus feedback on that. So at the end of the first part of the Science Gallery Venice, I'll have a video, and I'll post the link to that video, which is also on the slide. So you can open that up because I understand that you don't get sound through this platform. So I'll just let you watch that then on your own computers. So with that said, I'm going to start now. So now you're seeing the presentation full screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Excellent. So, as Cristina mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to speak to you obviously about Science Gallery Venice today. I just took over as director in January. I was kind of in and out of Venice the last few months of last year, and then started actually in Venice in January, of course, only there for a handful of weeks before the whole coronavirus pandemic and lockdown and everything. So since then, I've been in Geneva, where I'm based originally, and where my family lives, where we've lived for the last 15 years. So just to give you a very quick introduction to myself, I studied mechanical engineering originally at the University of California at Berkeley in near San Francisco. And I immediately went into, even before I graduated, research. So mostly in high energy physics, also in some material science, and did some work in on the Human Genome Project, actually. So different elements of let's say fundamental and also applied research, but always from the perspective of an engineer supporting the research. I was always interested in film and video and photography, and so I eventually took a sabbatical from my work and went to get a master's degree in film directing. And so I have kind of a training in both the science and art side of this kind of endeavor. And then I moved to Geneva in 2005 from the U.S. and was at CERN until basically last year. Actually, I still have a partial appointment at CERN, and then I took over in Science Gallery in January, like I said. So Science Gallery has been around since about 2008. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the network. But what people usually ask when they hear about Science Gallery, certainly when I told friends or colleagues about the fact that I would be taking over as director of Science Gallery Venice, they always asked me, what is Science Gallery? And that's a pretty obvious question, of course, because people always want to know what it is that you're up to. But of course, the real question behind that is, what does that mean, Science Gallery? And I think it's sort of intentionally ambiguous, or maybe provocative almost, you might say, because when you think of science, you think of a science center, you think of a science museum, or a science laboratory. And when you think of a gallery, you think of an art gallery, you think of a picture gallery, a photo gallery. But putting those two words together, science and gallery, really causes people to very frequently take a step back and say, okay, wait a second, what does that exactly mean? What is a science gallery? So the most simple answer to that question is that it's a worldwide network of galleries that are dedicated to public engagement with art and science. And each of these galleries is linked to a university. So the original gallery was in Dublin, Science Gallery Dublin, part of the University Trinity College in Dublin. And that was established as a standalone gallery in 2008. And then at some point after that, they decided, oh, this would be an interesting thing to try to bring to other cities in the world and to create a synergy amongst different cultures, different countries, and different institutions. But wanting to maintain a very, let's say, uniform approach and a very consolidated ethos in terms of how to approach this concept of linking art and science. They decided to have quite a strong central identity and to make sure that the role of research and the role of the university remained very, very tightly linked to the galleries. And so that's one reason why I believe the university link is enforced at every Science Gallery location. So the idea behind Science Gallery is quite simple. It's to reach out to the public and it's to take ideas from multiple domains of study and of life, so art, science, design, technology, research, even history, sociology, and to take these and to connect with people on these subjects in what would maybe be called surprising ways. And so these sort of three values, surprise, participate, and connect, are central to the entire Science Gallery vision. Now, Science Gallery, its whole goal, I think, at the beginning was to avoid being a traditional science center, and also to avoid being a typical art gallery. And it's probably pretty obvious to a lot of you maybe what that means when you think about the sort of the cliche of an art gallery, where, and there's a lot of artists that have obviously kind of rebelled against this, and in fact, in your master's program, as students that are working on exhibition design, it's something that you are probably facing even a little bit. This idea that a gallery space is this kind of hallowed, almost church-like kind of environment where the will of the artist is essentially paramount to everything, and it's something that you don't touch, you don't mess with, you don't change, and you are primarily, as a member of the public, you're primarily an observer. And that's kind of the typical, let's say, art gallery style or approach. Of course, this has been changing a lot with digital art, with interactive art, and so this is by no means every art gallery, but it's certainly still entrenched in the popular imagination as the primary characteristics of an art gallery. Science museums, on the other hand, probably used to have a pretty similar, actually, kind of feel to them, at least initially. And you can probably think of natural history museums, for example. And most of you are probably too young, but if you went to a natural history museum, say 30 years ago or something like that, 35 years ago, it was also a place where you didn't touch anything, where you were an observer, where you didn't really interact. Maybe you got a tour or something like that, but it was basically hands off. So science museums quickly, started turning into interactive science centers. I think actually a bit earlier than art galleries, and the whole goal was to try to engage the public in a more meaningful way, to interest young people, for example, and to create better opportunities for learning. And I think that art galleries in some way kind of fell a little bit behind that, even if a lot of them are kind of catching up. So the whole ethos of Science Gallery and Science Gallery Venice, of course, as one of the members in the network, is to try to combine these two approaches and to do more than just apply one to the other, but actually find synergistic ways that the approach of a science museum, or, for example, the study of science or research, can help us to better interact with, understand, and make meaning out of art, and vice versa. And these three sort of elements, central kind of values of surprise, participate, and connect. The idea is that we want to be presenting people with new ways of looking at the intersection of art and science, looking at these what are often called two distinct areas of sort of human thought, and show how they connect, show how people can be part of them, and show how that can create something really new and even more meaningful. The target age group, the principal target age group of Science Gallery is young people aged 15 to 25, and part of the reason for that is that a major portion of the goal of Science Gallery is to try to get people engaged in the global challenges of our day. So that could be climate change, obviously it could be pandemic response, It could be transportation. It could be methods of working, for example, social justice. All of these, food supply, all of these things are going to be huge challenges in the future. And so getting young people to get a really, really intense interest in these subjects so that they will go on to actually work towards solving them in the future is one of the primary goals of the gallery. So the gallery is, it's not an activist institution per se, but it certainly intends to enlighten people, make them think about the state of the world, and hopefully move them eventually to action. So when we talk about art and science, people usually conjure up this kind of cliched image, which is from, it's just a stock image from Shutterstock. And they think, oh, okay, well, there's an analytical side of the brain and a creative side of the brain. And these two sides are in some way separate. And people either are left-brained or right-brained, and that's kind of their identity. And so when we talk about science gallery, like I mentioned before, just putting those two words together, and when we talk about the combination of science and art, what we very frequently come up against are people saying, yeah, well, but I mean, artists and scientists, they work in very different ways. They don't have much in common. Now, this is changing a lot because people are getting, I think, a very strong appreciation of the way in which the world is becoming more and more interconnected. And so I think that this idea of the different disciplines being interconnected, like art and science, is becoming more easily accepted. But even about, well, let's say when Science Gallery Dublin opened in 2008, this was not a given. It was very, very difficult, even at that time, to convince people that, for example, research practice in science could actually have something to offer to research practice in the arts, or vice versa. And so when you would talk about having residencies, for example, of an artist and somebody working together, an artist working within an institution, for example, very much it was seen until quite recently, and even still, this question comes up a lot. It was seen as something that was primarily, I don't want to say a publicity stunt, but at least an element of publicity, meaning that a famous artist would come into an institution or something like that and basically just make it look good, and I think that now people are really starting to embrace this idea that art and science are actually practices that are intrinsically related. And in fact, that the brain doesn't function in the way that people have thought that it has. So what a lot of new research shows us actually is that when people are involved in the creative process, that creativity actually involves activity across the brain, and in fact, from one side of the brain to the other. And so having actually a strong, let's say, openness to this idea that we're using our entire brain, that there is no fundamental distinction between creativity in a research context or a scientific context and creativity in an artistic context. It enables a whole bunch of interesting interactions. It enables a whole bunch of techniques, approaches, both for scientific research as well as for artists, that can open up completely new avenues. And this is something that once people get exposed to, they become very convinced, and they become kind of ambassadors for the concept of the mutual beneficial nature of art and science, particularly in collaboration. And so we take this idea of science and art being black and white, two separate domains. And we say, okay, we are not going to treat them as being fundamentally different. We're just going to treat them as two different practices. Because when we talk about science and art, we actually, we also don't want to gloss over what are very clearly differences in the practice. And what I mean by that is, we can say, yes, scientists and artists, they work in similar ways. Creativity plays a role in both. They have similar pursuits. They both want to understand the world. They want to try to often find the hidden things in life that we need to uncover to try to understand who we are, where we come from. There are lots of these philosophical ways that science and art have almost identical pursuits, or you could very often write something about a scientist wanting to understand his origins or her origins, and how we came into being, and you could almost apply that to an artist word for word, and it would be equally valid. But of course, a scientist doesn't do what an artist does, meaning that a scientist working in a research lab on molecular and cell biology or something like that is clearly not just making art. And an artist that is working in their studio or on their computer or in a field making a sculpture, whatever, is clearly not doing molecular and cell biology, even if they might be using similar techniques. So we need to respect that those two disciplines are distinct, but that doesn't mean that their techniques don't need to be. It doesn't mean that their audiences need to be fundamentally different, and most of all, it doesn't mean that they should be separated in a black and white kind of scenario. So the real, I would say, underlying goal of Science Gallery, and this is the one that I find particularly compelling, is that it imagines a world where creativity has no boundaries, meaning that if you are a scientist who wants to make art, who wants to have something to say about the world philosophically, sociologically, wants to talk about beauty, then there's absolutely no reason why your creativity that you've developed in a research setting and in years of study and in degrees and everything shouldn't be valid. And likewise, there's absolutely no reason why artists shouldn't be given full freedom, basically, to explore all sorts of areas of public life, of issues that apply to society as a whole, and in fact, it's very clearly, I think, we need both of those things. Without science, we would get nowhere, obviously, in society. I mean, particularly this pandemic, I think, has shown us that better than anything else possibly could have. But likewise, we need art. We need artists, because without art, we have no emotion. Basically, we have no record of the emotional and sort of spiritual development of our society. And that is captured in what we call art. So I think that the world would be a very sad place without either science or art. And so giving this idea that we should have just creativity as a core value and as a core pursuit is really, let's say, the strongest intention, I think, of Science Gallery. So Science Gallery has a very particular style. And this style is central to its mission. It's also something that makes a Science Gallery exhibition feel like a Science Gallery exhibition. So it's typically informal. So we try to break down the barriers between groups that might feel like they don't have the right to ask us certain questions, or like they don't have a place to put questions to a creator, to a researcher, or to an artist. It's simple, meaning that we want it to be, we want everybody to be able to understand it. You shouldn't need a degree. You shouldn't need to be an art historian. It's innovative, so that means, of course, finding new technologies, finding new techniques, finding new points of view, and peer-to-peer, meaning that the idea is that you can come into a Science Gallery and you can interact with other people on the same level. Okay, and those people, you could come in as a young student, and you should be able to interact with a Nobel Prize winning physicist or something like that on the same level. And we try to enforce that ethos. It's compelling, meaning that a lot of the works that we show and the stories that we tell are very much about subjects that have a strong and visceral resonance to people, to society. It's warm, meaning that we invite people to come in to stay a while. Obviously, we don't have our gallery open yet, and we can't do that during the pandemic. But you all, I think, understand what that means to be a place that people can feel like they can come and they can explore and they can stay. It's certainly questioning, meaning that we like people to leave with more questions than they come in with. And it's very frequently provocative. So that doesn't mean that we search out controversy. Certainly the point is not to be controversial for the sake of being controversial. But at the same time, there are a lot of things in this world that are, let's say, wrong, for lack of a better word. There are a lot of areas that our society is lacking. A lot of places where our response to challenges is particularly falling short, and in the climate crisis, that's certainly one of them. And we need people to be aware of that. We need to push on them and to prod and to try to jar them, into action. And so, being provocative is one way that we do that. So this is a collection of some of the exhibitions that have been shown at science galleries, not at Science Gallery Venice, but at science galleries around the network. And you can kind of see, just by looking at this, I think you get, well, first of all, you see a kind of a uniformity to the graphic design, of course. You see that the images are singular, are striking, are evocative. They certainly don't leave you with a lack of an impression. I mean, they make an impact on you. Maybe make you curious. Maybe you find slightly disgusting potentially, or maybe disturbing at some level. Certainly provocative, and that's key. That's the thing that I think that sets Science Gallery apart. You should never come to a science gallery exhibition, I think, and feel like you've left without any impression about it. I mean, it needs to stir some kind of emotional response. It needs to cause some kind of questioning and make you think twice about what you just saw. And then this one down here at the bottom, Illusion, is the one that we have had at CFZ, at the library, the Cultural Flow Zone Library of Ca' Foscari, which was closed, unfortunately, about 3 weeks after it opened. It opened in the end of January, and I'm going to show you a video on Illusion at the end of the beginning of this, at the end of this first half of the presentation. So, what makes Science Gallery distinctive? I mean, what I've just described to you, I think, is already pretty distinctive. But what about it is different in terms of its operation and its structure and things like that? And so, again, Science Gallery is a bit different than a normal gallery, let's say, or even a normal science center. We do not have a permanent program, a permanent collection, that is. So we don't have a collection of works that we own and that we occasionally bring out to put into the gallery and then cycle back into storage again. We have an ever-changing program, so every exhibition is different and is new, and that exhibition stays for a period of time, a few months or something like that. And then moves on, either to another science gallery or to another gallery not in the Science Gallery network, or to a science center or something like that. All of the programs, all the exhibitions, what we would call the major seasons, go through an open call process. So while we do have curators and a curatorial board, basically, and experts as well, depending on what the subject of the exhibition is, they're really formed through an open call process. And this is, I think, a really critical part of the Science Gallery MO, modus operandi. It ensures diversity. It ensures a democratic process. It also means that people with really good ideas get them considered You don't need to be a famous artist, for example, in order to have your idea looked at. And that's something that I think is absolutely essential when you look at operating kind of on the margins of what is the mainstream, like we do. You don't want to simply go to the usual suspects, the usual artists, and put together shows of huge names, but that exclude young people, that exclude underrepresented people, and certainly above all, exclude people that are maybe just getting started in their careers. So this open call process is really key for that. And to give you an idea, we have an artist in residency program, which I'll talk just briefly about later, and we get, for example, we had something like 160 applications from 60 countries or something like that. So we get a huge number of people from diverse places around the world in this open call process. We involve people from all ages. So while our target group, our main target group, our primary target group is 15 to 25, we create programs that are accessible to children and families. We appeal to, obviously, people who are older than this 25 age group as well. And what we try to do is have something for everybody. So we want people to be able to, like I said before, always feel like they're welcome at Science Gallery. Like they always have something to learn and they always have something to give. And so this application to all ages also extends obviously to all demographics, meaning all cultures, all languages, all manner of accessibilities, let's say, and so we try to make sure that everybody is able to participate and enjoy Science Gallery. Science Gallery is a bridge between the university and the city, which is a particular aspect of the Science Galleries in that they are all hosted by universities. So as a structure of Ca' Foscari, Science Gallery Venice is meant to be the sort of gateway between Ca' Foscari researchers and the city. Meaning also the general public, the students, tourists as well, everybody. In fact, Science Gallery Venice is quite distinct in that as well, because we are founded by Ca' Foscari and by an organization called DVRI, which is the Veneto Region Innovation District and Innovation Network, and DVRI. It includes universities and art museums and foundations from around the city. And it actually gives us a strong tie-in to just about everybody in Venice who has an interest in public outreach and engagement, and in combining art and science in order to address the future challenges to society. So we have really we're not just the gateway for Ca' Foscari, but really the gateway for many institutions, and we want to be that. So we're open to many institutions in Venice in order to serve that role. Science Galleries have something called the Leonardo Group, which is kind of an advisory group made up of thought leaders, established artists, organizational chiefs and things like that, from a diverse set of both stakeholders as well as other interested parties. And they number about 40 to 50 people. And that group meets every couple of months, basically, to try to inform the Science Gallery Venice strategy. This is something that is Science Gallery wide. So every Science Gallery has a Leonardo group. Like I said before, the gallery is accessible. And our main focus really is, as I've mentioned a few times, on the future. So the main probably word to use for Science Gallery programming is transdisciplinary. Maybe that would have been called multidisciplinary in the past, but of course nomenclature evolves just like people. And what that means is that we often try to combine people from diverse backgrounds, put them together, and try to get them to tackle problems and pieces and exhibitions and projects together. And so sometimes that means putting together people who would never normally work together. And sometimes it means asking people to do things which are outside of their normal work environments or their normal comfort zones. And that's part of our whole ethos. The Science Gallery Network is worldwide. So Science Gallery International is the structure that links them all together, which is also at Trinity College in Dublin. And there are 4 science galleries in Europe. So there's Dublin, London, Rotterdam, and Venice. There are 2 in North America, in Atlanta and Detroit. There's one in India, in Bangalore, and there's one in Melbourne in Australia. And these science galleries, most of them do not have permanent buildings yet. Like Science Gallery Venice. In fact, the only 2 that have permanent buildings for the moment are Dublin and London, which are the two oldest ones. So London's been open for a couple of years. Dublin's been open since 2008. All of the other ones are doing programming like Science Gallery Venice is doing, which is right now on an interim basis, meaning that we do programs in a third-party space or in a space of the university or whatever for a period of time, and then we vacate that space and we move on to the next program at some point in the future. So we have a kind of itinerant sort of nature at the moment, but eventually, within about we hope less than 2 years, our gallery at San Basilio will be ready. So Science Gallery Venice, as a member of the network, is a little bit unusual, let's say. I mean, first of all, it's in Venice, of course, which Venice is, obviously one of the probably world's most concentrated places for art, and from the incredibly profound history of art in Venice to the Biennale, of course, which is probably the world's largest contemporary art structure. It is a place, obviously, that sort of just drips art, and that is something that makes any gallery in Venice have a particular advantage. But as I mentioned before, Science Gallery Venice, having been founded by DVRI, has also these links to academic institutions, museums, and foundations across the city, which allow us to reach out and to also pull in researchers as well as other people that are interested in our core values and have them participate and then offer them something back. So this is a particular thing that Science Gallery Venice can do. Our core values that we've defined for the gallery specifically in Venice are sustainability, accessibility, and inclusion, and those 3 things are related to each other, but are all distinct. And everything we do is going to call on essentially those 3 values. So that means that we're looking at sustainable ways to manage our exhibitions. We're very, very interested in accessibility for people of all different languages, people of all different physical and mental challenges, for example. And also we want to be inclusive. So we want everybody to feel welcome, and we want to speak to all demographics, all lifestyles, all interest groups, and have a place where people can feel free to voice their opinions, but then also discuss with people who might not necessarily agree with them, but who respect them. And San Basilio is our location. So right next to, it's actually in the Ca' Foscari / Iuav area, and that location we believe is going to be really an up-and-coming place in Venice, and that together with Iuav and Ca' Foscari, Science Gallery Venice can create really an environment there that's going to make that area explode. So the building is the Tesa Quattro, the 4th of the warehouses that are at the San Basilio terminal area in Venice along the Zattere. And this building, like the other buildings that have already been refurbished for both Iuav and Ca' Foscari, are a bridge between the new and the old, obviously, but everything in Venice is full of character and history. And this space is going to be dedicated to this cross-disciplinary, transdisciplinary exploration of art and science. And so on the ground floor, we will have a permanently accessible, even when there's no exhibition in the Science Gallery space, we'll have a permanently accessible interactive art, meaning mixed reality, virtual reality, augmented reality, and other interactive medias space. We will have a restaurant and study space, which will be available to students all the time. And we intend to put in place a programming kind of season, which will mean that live events and activities, talks, concerts, things like that will be available year-round for students, and hopefully programmed by students as well, is one of the main goals. And like I said, this is going to be a meeting point between the city and the university. But what we really want to do is animate this area. So we want to be, open late. We want to be there all week long, all year long, and be a place where, students feel at home, where researchers feel at home, where the general public feels like they can come and discover something new and also get a little taste of what's going on in the academic world in Venice, and also where tourists feel like they can come and actually get an authentic taste of what it's like to have people actually from Venice and people living in Venice and working in Venice all together exploring these new concepts that we will be presenting. So this is just a few renders of the building. This is thanks to Cristina and her colleagues at Iuav, who actually put these together a long time ago. The current renders for the building are slightly different, but from the outside they're not really very different, let's say. So you can see here, this is the area where the gallery is. So these other three buildings on the left are the other Iuav and Kafaskari buildings. And you can see that there's still asphalt in a parking lot here, which we're hoping will go away at some point, so that this will be a pedestrian area like it should be, right on the waterfront on the Giudecca Canal. This is a closer view, so you can see that the building will be renovated, but its original shape and form will be, for the most part, maintained. And really the idea is that we will utilize both the indoor and outdoor space, in particular between the two buildings, but also hopefully in front on an ad hoc basis, in order to have both indoor and outdoor accessible area for both exhibitions as well as people coming to eat and to share and to study and things like that. So the inside of Science Gallery, it remains to be seen exactly how it'll look. This is a beautiful rendering that shows something which is obviously light and airy. It won't be quite so airy because we're not allowed actually to take out as many walls as this shows. But it will obviously, because it's situated in this building, which has basic windows all the way on both sides, it will be quite open and inviting for people. And will be very, very fully linked actually to the outside world. So the canal will almost always be available, as well as the waterfront and the Giudecca across the way. And this is a mock-up of the entryway to the gallery. So it's going to be a building with essentially 4 floors. So you can see here there's a ground floor, which is the entryway with this sort of showpiece staircase. So this will be like a very identifying feature of the gallery. And this staircase will occupy this large open volume of space, which will then also be a primary area for us to hang, for example, works from the top floor down. The Science Gallery primary galleries will be on the 1st and 2nd floors. And then on the 3rd floor, we have a sort of altana, which is on top of the building between the 2 peaks, which is where the offices and co-working space will be. And you can see just a couple of other pictures of this. So this is the location, which I think most of you know, right in front of the old terminal, and in front of the waterfront. And so we're hoping that all of these cars that are shown just below this area will go away, and that area will be eventually turned into a pedestrian area, which will also be much more valuable to the students, citizens, and visitors to Venice. So Illusion is our first full season that Science Gallery Venice has presented, which was supposed to be from January to April of this year. Obviously, it was from January to mid-February and then closed. So we are hoping to keep it, but we don't yet know exactly what that schedule will be. But one of the things that we're looking at now very, very closely, and this is one of the major reasons for myself being here today and Erica being here today to present this to you, is that we want to work with you, actually, whoever is potentially interested, and also obviously your colleagues at Iuav, in developing a virtual gallery presence. And part of the reason for that is obviously related to the pandemic, but also because clearly not everybody can come to Venice. Not everybody can always come to a gallery exhibition. And as we don't have a permanent collection and these works basically get cycled on to another destination eventually, it means we have no further access to them. So what we seek to do right now is to figure out how to transform our exhibitions into both physical and virtual versions, which will then live on, will be an archive that will be accessible to people both within Venice and beyond, and will be something that we can keep, even though we don't keep the artworks themselves. So Illusion, which is subtitled "Nothing is as it seems," is probably one of the older science gallery exhibitions. It's from about 2013, I believe. So certainly not 2008, but it's been around for roughly half the life of the Science Gallery Network. It's been very popular. It's traveled around the world. And it's both digital as well as physical exhibition, in the sense that a lot of the works are on screens, or a lot of the works are interactive or videos, that kind of thing. But actually, a lot of them are also physical, like zoetropes, like this particular piece that you see on the picture here, which is a sort of perspective illusion, and these works are, I think, they're very good at capturing the sort of science gallery approach, which is that these artists who have created these works are using illusion as a tool in their work, not as a didactic subject. So their goal was not to illustrate what is an illusion and then pick something to do that. They are using illusion in their work, and then we are talking about how that illusion works both physically, mentally, and also with regard to the natural world when we explain it to visitors to the gallery. And so this really provides an excellent sort of platform for us to say to people, okay, all of these pieces can be appreciated just as works of art, but there's a lot behind them in terms of how you see them, in terms of how your brain works when you see them, and in terms of even how the physical world works, meaning light and refraction and things like that. And so we can talk to people at length about why these illusions work, but also they're just fun and very striking to look at. And I'll show a video about illusion in a few minutes. We also have a major residency program, which is Earth, Water, Sky, and it's funded by the Pre-Med Foundation in Switzerland. It is really a world-renowned residency program on sustainability. These three subjects, Earth, Water, and Sky, represent three different artists in three different years of the program. So it started last year with Emma Critchley, who was on water. This year, we've selected an artist in residence named Haseeb Ahmed, who's going to be working on wind, which is the sky track of the residency program. He's going to begin roughly in September, but also in a virtual manner until he can come next year. And these programs really bring in an artist to work directly with a researcher at Ca' Foscari, and to have that researcher inform, expand, and hopefully benefit from the artist's influence. And so there's really meant to be a partnership. And Haseeb Ahmed, who's working on wind, is a fascinating both installation as well as video artist, and he will be with us from September. Emma Critchley is a renowned underwater photographer and videographer who was working on water. The project actually that she was working with was called Ice Memory, and her piece was supposed to premiere in September of this year, but unfortunately it was delayed, of course, because of the cancellation of the Biennale, and also because of the obviously just the concerns of COVID and everything. It will be shown next May, hopefully, instead. And she filmed dancers dancing underwater in the world's deepest, I believe it's the world's deepest, a deep diving pool, which is actually only about an hour from Venice. We also have smaller exhibitions, what we call maybe pop-up exhibitions. And these ones are curated entirely by Science Gallery Venice, meaning that they do not go through the open call process. The last one that we had was called Elements, and it was for the anniversary of the periodic table. And that took place in October of last year, and it was at the campus in Mestre, the technical campus in Mestre for Ca' Foscari, and the Via Torino campus, and combined what could be considered perhaps some didactic elements, so some very educational parts on what elements are, on where they're used, on how we need them, obviously, but also some of the risks that certain elements pose, even though they might be essential to our daily lives. And then that was combined with many art pieces that use some of those unusual and interesting elements, like heavy metals and things like that. And this is one that we put together all on our own. In fact, it was put together by Erica and Matteo Severo, who's actually, I think, a lecturer as well at Iuav, and who works with us frequently in exhibition design. They really, the two of them, put that together almost on their own, basically. We also do very small pop-up events like this one called Hello Machine, which was an event sort of about interaction and anonymity in society. And so essentially these two phones, for example, would be linked from different places, and you pick up the phone and then somebody on the other end who you didn't know would be there for you to speak with. And so this is sort of one of those kind of slightly provocative ways that you can get people to rethink how they interact, and also what the sort of norms and everything in society are. And then we organize many collateral events, in particular with the exhibitions. These can be workshops, they can be labs that teach people particular techniques or particular, for example, artistic domains, that kind of thing. They can be talks by researchers or by artists or by researchers with artists, performances, theater pieces, music, magic, for example, and movie nights as well. And so we had planned a whole series of these. I think we had about 23 events planned with Illusion, and unfortunately we were unable to produce most of them because of the coronavirus shutdown. Getting towards the end now, one of the most important things about Science Gallery are what we call the Young Voices program. And this is a really, I think, unique initiative of Science Gallery, in the sense that we seek out young people to work with us for a period of time, which is an extended period of time, so a year or 2 years, and we ask them to do real productive work. So we're not just bringing them in to give us some kind of feedback from time to time. We're really asking them to be a part of the gallery, to work on projects with us, and to produce their own projects, which we then showcase. And so the Young Voices, for example, in the context of Illusion, worked on a lot of the public engagement aspects, so things that people could do at the opening to the exhibition, where they could interact with simple illusions and things like that, as well as a lot of the collateral events were conceived and produced by our Young Voices. And so these are people who bring a fresh, diverse, and young approach to what we do, and we really rely on them being an integral part of our programming process in a lot of ways. So Science Gallery Venice is meant to be a real destination for both people who live in Venice and who are near it all the time. So meaning a space where they can come in, have a coffee, read, study, meet with friends, meet with colleagues, interact, hang out. It's meant to be both that very familiar place, like a public house, if you take the British kind of term. And that, as well as an international destination, meaning that tourists will come in, people from all over Europe and even the world, to see something really unique. But to be that, of course, it needs both a space, which is going to be in the making very soon. We have luckily the building, and we're just waiting now, basically, for companies to bid on its renovation. But it also needs then an online presence, a virtual presence, and that's what we're going to talk about next. We want you to help us conceive of what the virtual presence of Science Gallery Venice should be. We are hoping that we can make the Science Gallery Network adopt a virtual gallery approach, which will be accessible to everybody. But even if they don't, and Science Gallery Venice has to go alone, we're determined to make this change, because we believe that, especially given what has happened so far with COVID, it's critical to have both physical and virtual presence. So I'm going to let you watch. I guess I'll let people go and get this video open. Okay. Hopefully you've managed to watch the entire video. Of course, you can watch it later if you haven't had a chance to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just fairly quickly now, I hope, the COVID era and online access, and about the virtual gallery experience, and then we'll go into the kind of workshop section of the day. So as you saw in that video, it violated basically every social distancing regulation in effect now, and that's obviously the major motivation for us to go online and to go virtual. But in fact, there's also the simple fact that people are acquiring new habits during this time period. And even if we manage to go back to effectively world as it was, 6 months ago, right? Even if by next year we're sort of back to quote normal again, people will have learned over these 6 months, 9 months, whatever it ends up being. They will have learned to modify their behavior. They will have learned to consume content online. They will have learned, as you all are learning now, to participate in classes, for example, through online portals. And there are some advantages to these techniques. They're not good for everything, but they're good for a lot of things, and they reach a lot more people potentially. So we're assuming that this habit is not going to go away. And because of this, we esteem that it's critical for Science Gallery Venice to have a strong virtual and online access. Now, in terms of our website, it's not an incredibly advanced website platform, and so what we need to do is develop something new. But what we want to do is, we don't want to just have a website. We don't want to just have a well-constructed web page. We want to have something that really gives people a different experience. And so the question is, what will that experience be? It'll become, like we said, or like I just said, more and more relevant as visitor habits adapt, but also because technologies adapt. So this COVID time has led to the development. Cristina was mentioning earlier how this team platform from Microsoft is being updated, every week or whatever. A lot of companies are working very, very strongly on improving these virtual tools, these online tools. But also, in the virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality sector, the rate of change, the rate of advancement is also very, very high, and this present environment is only going to push that faster. So eventually, it's going to become very, very, let's say, convincing to do virtual experiences. So we're sort of at the beginning of that phase, but nonetheless, in a very short period of time, we will have technology that will make it all the more worthwhile. So we want to get in on this train early, as they say. So in terms of what you want in a virtual gallery, we come back to these three keywords that we talked about at the beginning, which are surprise, participate, and connect. And there's absolutely no reason why we would change the effect that we want to have on our public. If our goal is to surprise people, make them participate in events, and connect them when they come into the physical gallery, then that is exactly what we should be trying to do in the virtual gallery. But of course, the way that we do it isn't going to be exactly the same. So I've listed these kind of seven characteristics of a virtual gallery that we're looking for. These are by no means all inclusive. I'm sure there's something missing here. And of course, if you actually think of something, then what we want to do in the next section is hear about that. But so first and foremost, I think this virtual gallery has to be visually rich. It's not really good enough to have just a web page with photos, even if they're amazing photos. There's something static and predictable about the very linear serial method of conveying information on a web page. And so making it visually rich is a way to improve that, and changing it to a kind of technology that makes it not just rich, but also immersive, which is the second element, is what really offers something, I think, beyond the norm. So immersivity is something that is talked a lot about in virtual reality in interactive exhibits. Immersion is what it's called, and so immersion means basically using tools and techniques that allow people to feel like they're really there, to generate what we call presence. And a big part of immersiveness or immersion is interactivity, which is the third one. It doesn't have to be interactive. A visually rich and immersive environment, meaning one where you're surrounded by screens, for example, by a deep, luxurious image that surrounds you completely. It's very immersive, even if it's not at all interactive. But interactivity adds that level of, let's say, that level of personal touch that otherwise you don't get. So just looking at something turns the public into, basically just a bystander, just an observer. But once it becomes interactive, then of course it becomes personalized. A virtual gallery should also have unique content in the sense that we don't want to simply present what is being shown in the gallery. In this era, for example, right now, of course, if we did that, it would probably be good enough because people can't actually visit the gallery. But eventually we will have people visiting the gallery, but also people using the virtual gallery. And so we would really like it that people who visit the virtual gallery receive something in content or in terms of content that they do not get when they visit the physical space. It should be human, meaning that, if it's sterile, if it's devoid of texture, if it's devoid of the elements of human interaction and things like that, there have to be ways to manage that. Clearly, any virtual experience is going to be at some level devoid of what makes the experience of going into a physical gallery a very human experience. But that's something that can be addressed in different ways through types of interaction, through also art design, and through things like avatars. So we should endeavor to make it as human as possible, but that has some serious limitations as well. And then accessible, meaning that we don't want it to be, if it's a virtual gallery and that can be done in virtual reality, then that's great. But if it can only be done in virtual reality, then that's problematic. And like I said before, accessibility is one of our keywords for Science Gallery Venice. And so making sure that everybody can experience a virtual gallery, either through a normal web browser or on a normal computer, as well as through a tablet or a phone or through virtual reality is very key. Obviously, this is complicated because most of the technologies that power these kinds of things are platform dependent or device dependent. And a good example is that a lot of virtual reality cannot be used on a Mac. A lot of it has to be done on a PC. Some of it's standalone, like the Oculus Quest headset that's shown here in the picture, meaning that it can run something specifically on the headset, doesn't need to be connected to a computer. But at the same time, even that means that it has to be built for the Android operating system that works on that headset. So there are a huge number of technical concerns there, but there are also some concerns in terms of what we decide to do. Meaning, if we're going to make it accessible, is it accessible for not just people who are using Macs, PCs, VR headsets, phones, etc., but is it also accessible for people who are illiterate, people like kids, who don't write, who don't type, Is it accessible for people who don't hear well, for example? Is it accessible for people who are blind? Those things are all big questions, and clearly we can't satisfy everybody in every way, but we need to be as open to variations of this kind of experience that allow it to be as accessible as possible. And lastly, in my list, I have this adaptable and ever-changing. And of course, what that means is that if we spend an immense amount of effort creating a virtual gallery, and then we change the show in the gallery, it has to be able to be changed in the virtual gallery. We need to be able to offer content, like I said, that's unique, but that content obviously then has to change. So this virtual gallery platform, whatever it is, needs to be able to be updated constantly. So I'm just going to go through a few of the sort of virtual visits that exist already in the Science Gallery Network. This is kind of the let's say the most traditional kind of virtual kind of visit, is basically where you have a web page that has a floor plan which shows you actually the real physical space and the way it's laid out, and then has a list of the different artworks that you can click on and read about. Okay, this is relatively traditional. Or very traditional, let's say, in terms of what you might call a virtual gallery. And this is something that basically all science galleries pretty much do. But what we want to do is take it the next step. So some other galleries have done things like this. This is one exhibition called Seeing. And what I'm going to do now is, you can actually try this on your own computer as well. I'm going to go to so this is Unreal. I'm going to go to this one. Can you still see this, everybody?
Yes.
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 Okay, so this is a relatively straightforward way to do what is a somewhat immersive tour, but which obviously is also static and doesn't allow three-dimensional navigation. This is essentially a series of 360-degree images. And what you can see here, you can see on the bottom, there are these three different basically spaces that we can look at. So there's the entrance, there's the first floor, and there's the ground floor. These were taken with real people, obviously, in place. And that was made possible by the fact that this is a 360 still photo, okay? And there's only one in each location. So this, interestingly, and this kind of shows some of the trade-offs and sort of cost-benefit questions that are at play here. This one shows people. This one has a quite human aspect. It's a real space with real people in it, and those real people are actually really observing and experiencing the artworks. And so it doesn't necessarily give you the feeling of being there in the sense that it's a still image, you can't walk around and everything, and people aren't moving. But at the same time, it gives you really the idea that this is a real place where people really come to experience art. And then it has these little hotspots, basically, which you can see, which allow to play a video. And this video then allows the user in the virtual gallery to actually get some additional content. And in some cases, even more content than might have been available, in fact, at the original exhibition in place. So this is a good way, for example, to show close-ups, to show videos, to show interaction like this, and to offer content that would not otherwise necessarily be available. And that works obviously with photos as well. This is a relatively simple one. This is just the text on the wall of the gallery, the classic gallery introductory text, or not introductory, but this is one of the pieces, which is not loading now for whatever reason. Anyway, which pops up. And then, of course, you can go to the next floor and you just fade to another 360 view. where you have, again, a series of, let's say, pop-ups that you can use to learn something about the particular piece that was there. This is all from Science Gallery Dublin. Okay, so this is, and then just a little view outside. So that's that's the sort of, let's say, maybe simplest implementation of a virtual gallery. Then going a step up, or step up, maybe up is a too value-based judgment, value-based term, but going to a step greater in complexity. You have a 3D scan of the environment, which I think you've studied actually, using photogrammetry or depth sensing cameras. And this is Matterport, which I assume probably most of you are familiar with. This is the dollhouse view in Matterport. And so if we come here, what you can see is this is a scan that was done from a handful of locations from each of these hotspots, basically, or each of these destination points, kind of. Sorry, these are actually the hotspots, but the destination points you'll see once you go into it. This photogrammetric scan creates a three-dimensional space, which from the dollhouse perspective looks a bit funny because, of course, there's a lot of missing pieces, a lot of missing edges and things like that. But once you go into it, it becomes quite complete. And so this one now, what we can remark is that, of course, it is essentially devoid of people. And that's, of course, intentional, because you can't do this type of scanning where you have to move from one location to the next, like from a location here to location here to location there. So because you obviously need to do multiple scans in the space over time, you can't have people involved. You can't have that aspect. But you can navigate through the space. And the scan is a higher quality than a simple 360 image, meaning it's higher resolution, although now you can take 8K 360 images at least. So that's something that's getting better. You can navigate to every particular location, stand in front of an artwork and look at it directly, and then of course have a pop-up. Now this one, interestingly, doesn't have pop-ups in the same way. So the pop-up here, for example, is very small. It can't be resized, and it's a YouTube link, which is fine, but which has, let's say, takes up some real estate and things like that. And there's clearly a link where you can go to a web page and learn more about this directly. But when you go to the web page, obviously, then you jump out of the 3D tour, and it becomes a somewhat different experience at that point. So that's the sort of, let's say, interim or kind of next most complicated level. Then you can do that. This was done, I think, quite some time ago. Then this is another one that has a similar technique, another Matterport scan. Although this one is done with quite a bit higher, I think, resolution and quality. And you can see that the space is also quite a bit more complex. And so, in fact, it allows you to really navigate all of the nooks and crannies, basically, and to go into even the video booth. But you can't play a video just on the screen like that. So there are also some limitations there. So I encourage you to check these out if you find them interesting, but I think you probably get the idea. So in all of these, there are essentially three kind of different categories of infrastructure that are needed. And when I say infrastructure, of course, I mean, virtual infrastructure, meaning application design, coding, but also potentially hardware on the part of the user. In terms of hardware that's used to create it, and also hardware that hosts it, obviously. So the first is the space or the platform. So obviously the platform would be like a web page in the first instance, the most simplest one that I showed you. And then there's the space, which can be a 3D scan, or can be a completely built 3D environment, or it can be something altogether different if you want to just take free rein with it. So there's really no rule about what that has to be. It just depends on what we want to accomplish. Our idea, of course, or one of our ideas, was to do a sort of Matterport style scan of illusion, but then to create a three-dimensional virtual gallery based on what we think the San Basilio Tesa Quattro will look like. But that's of course not necessarily something that has to be the case. Then there's content, and content both means, let's say, the artworks themselves, but of course then it means everything that's auxiliary to that. So videos about the artworks, 360 videos of the artworks, regular 2D video, pictures, text, artist testimonials, spinnable 3D virtual objects. You can imagine all sorts of options there. Even augmented reality, of course, too. And then the third category is interaction. So is what and how do we interact, and through what technique or what tool, and what is that technique? What does that interaction serve to allow us to do? Because interaction for the sake of interaction is probably not very worthwhile. It has to have some real purpose. So presence is this feeling of being there, which was postulated by Mel Slater and his colleagues, who's one of the world's most famous researchers in virtual reality, and who's written a lot about presence and immersion. And these apply not just to virtual reality, but also to any type of interactive sort of virtualized experience. And there's a lot of research out there into how that's accomplished and what that means. But there are also just some general techniques, and the easiest sort of way to approach that is just to ask yourself at any given time, if I'm trying to replicate or create an even more fully featured experience than one that's real in a virtual environment, then what do I do to make the person feel like they're really there? So in virtual reality, and probably maybe some of you have experienced this if you've been to virtual reality exhibitions or arcades, in some of them, there's a whole process of sort of being indoctrinated into the virtual world. And so you might go, for example, there are two structures, two companies basically that are based both in Europe and the States, but which primarily have venues in the States. One of them is called Dreamscape Immersive, and the other one is called The Void. And they both run what's called location-based virtual reality, which are basically where you get to go into a mall or something like that, or to an amusement park, and there's a place that you go, a room you go into, where you're completely tracked and where you have a virtual avatar and everything. And they spend a not small amount of effort in getting you into that experience. So, for example, getting you suited up in an environment that is diegetic with the narrative that you're going to be diving into. So you might put on, a backpack that looks like a spacesuit or that kind of thing. You might be in a room that looks like an airlock. The technicians that will be working with you and getting you outfitted with the headset and stuff like that might be dressed as if they're astronauts or whatever, if you're going into space. And this kind of, let's say, predisposing the brain to believe what it is about to then receive through the sensory medium of virtual reality is a good way to increase the idea that you are actually in that space. And so it's a way to sort of worm into the brain and suggest that what is about to happen is very real and is not incongruent with the world that you just came from, rather than being something totally just bizarre and out there. But clearly, for a virtual gallery experience at home on a browser without a lot of hardware, these techniques are not as possible. And so we have to think about more what's happening within the virtual gallery that makes people feel like they're a part of it than actually preparing them ahead of time. So in order to try to bridge that gap, a lot of social VR platforms have come up. So there's Altspace VR, there's one ran by Janus VR, and there's also VR Chat, amongst others. And all of them attempt to create this experience of being present by giving you lots of autonomy and having you interact with other real people. Now, these other real people are not necessarily shown as real people. They have these funny avatars, as you can see in this picture. Some of them look like Lego people. Some of them, like this one here in the middle in green, is just almost like a double helix of DNA or something like that. Some of them look like Wall-E robots. There's all sorts of different views there, and none of them are very realistic. And there's a good reason for that. And one of the sort of ironies of virtual environments and virtual experiences is that the more you want to convince somebody that it's real, the better you have to do it. And that kind of sounds obvious, but there's a funny pitfall where if you make it more and more real, but you don't get all the way to perfectly real, there's a point at which you actually basically lose your viewer. And this is called the uncanny valley, which you may be well familiar with. And the idea is that basically this bottom scale here is human likeness from 0 to 100%. And and on the left is familiarity, which could also be interpreted as how much the person felt like they were actually in a real experience, or how much the person identified empathetically with the characters and whatever experience that they were in, or they're being measured in. And this has been experimentally studied a lot. And what we see here is that as the avatar becomes more and more human, which you can see here going from left to right, the experience of familiarity, your feeling of being really, in that avatar, of being actually present in whatever scene that is, it goes up until a certain point. And then at some point, the avatar becomes so human-like and yet not human-like enough to be real, that in fact it becomes very strange, like looking into a mirror but where you're not blinking or something like that. And that strangeness is freaky to people, for lack of a better word, and it causes their association with the avatar and with the environment to plummet. And in the worst case, it can actually have a rejection effect, where they really don't like it. And you can see this these two labels here, corpse and zombie. These are where in fact it becomes a real deterrent to the person. So this sometimes happens when you try to make individualized avatars. So for example, you take somebody's face and you scan it, and then you graft it onto a digitally rendered body. And for some people, especially if you need to move a lot and things like that, and that movement's not natural, it almost looks like you are looking at a dead version of yourself, or that kind of thing. And this is very sometimes something that people reject quite strongly. Of course, if you do the likeness absolutely perfectly, which you get up towards 100%, then people start to re-identify actually with the avatar. And so this is something that is a challenge in terms of virtual experiences, and which also informs whether or not you try to have actually realistic avatars. And so platforms that are incapable of doing very, very high quality avatars, like these social VR platforms, they resort back to these kinds of very, very fake, very sort of almost comedic avatars, because they fall in this sort of humanoid robot stuffed animal kind of range, around 50%, which is pretty good. It allows people autonomy, allows people to have free will and to move around and to interact with others, and yet it doesn't risk pushing them into this uncanny valley where they will dislike the experience. So for a gallery like Science Gallery, which has an intrinsic link to technology, research, cutting edge, new techniques and new domains, The question is really, what is the right virtual gallery implementation? That's what we're searching for right now. And that's one of the things that we would like to have your help with. And so now we're going to move to the kind of interactive workshop section, which is not going to be super complicated or anything. It's going to, the idea is that what we're going to do is ask you to feedback on these three areas that I talked about before: space and platform, content and interaction. And just ask you to do a quick brainstorming on that. And so what I want to do is have you think about, in these three categories, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages in terms of space and platform of replicating the space in fidelity and high fidelity directly? What are the advantages and disadvantages of simpler or more complex platforms, meaning that have more functionality, more possibilities? And what are those advantages and disadvantages of implementations which don't have a direct link to the physical world? Meaning, instead of trying to mimic a science gallery in Venice, we create the Death Star or something like that as our gallery, from Star Wars, whatever. And then, how much is realism important? How is adaptability considered, for example, in this platform or in the space that you envision? And what are some of the pitfalls? Those are just some things to think about. And then, in terms of content, and you have these slides, so you can come back and look at these. How much do we or can we replicate content virtually? And how much should we try? What can we add to make the content more rewarding? I mean, just having a video about every piece, for example, gets a little bit old hat after a while. What should we avoid? What opportunities are offered online that don't exist in the real world that can actually offer that additional content, or that content not available in another venue that I mentioned before? And how do virtual implementations relate to the artist? For example, if you create a really full-featured virtual representation of an artwork, does the artist need to be involved in that? Is that in some sense a piece of their art, or is that something that you've done as documentation and which you own completely as the gallery? And this is an interesting question. I don't have the answer to that. I don't have the answer to any of these, actually. That's one reason why we're asking you for this feedback. And then lastly, interaction. What is the right amount of interactivity? This is a big question for virtual experiences. And how realistic should it be? Because sometimes, and if any of you have done maybe complex VR experiences, you may have seen this before. Sometimes there's a huge amount of interactivity, a huge amount of nuance, the interactivity, but it's so complicated to use and requires so much time to learn that it's very prohibitive. And so, what is the right balance there? Are avatars appropriate? Is live mediation the right approach, for example? What about AI chatbots, which we know are not super realistic, but still personalized to some extent? How can we make the interaction worthwhile without it being super complicated such that people can't handle it? And does everything even require interactivity? Where is it wise to avoid interactivity, for example? Maybe there's some times when you just want to be a spectator.
It was perfect, and it was really full of inspirational topics because you were really going from the basic needs of the science gallery that I was really interested in how you describe what are the goals of science gallery, and especially for the most uncommon details, like, for example, that must be a warm place. This is a kind of soft skill for a space that is quite uncommon, and is probably one of those things that is more difficult to connect with this challenge that you launched to the students, to think about which is the best virtual space that can try to recreate that warm feeling that you have when you are in that kind of space. Now, really, guys, if you want to ask something, this is the moment, because then afterward we switch to the second part Anybody has a question?
For now, my brain is overloaded to the word of fantastic experience, and I am processing all the content. Yeah, I think you was very clear about the transdisciplinarity and the core of this interaction between art and science that I think is super cool. And yeah, and you explain a lot of things. Then I think I have to realize best, and you give me a lot of detail about that for now.
Good.
Also, I trust a lot in this relation between art and science. I am here with a physicist that work with imaging and realize a lot of software for cell and cancer research. Then, and he is very involved to this, and I really trust in this relation between art and science for increase the knowledge and open new field of knowledge for people. And yeah, I think science needs art and art needs science for enlarge the view, for sure.
Yeah, we see more and more organizations using artists in residence, to work with researchers and even labs, small labs, even of a few people and that kind of thing. And it's an interesting approach because it's often not very expensive, depending on obviously where the artist comes from and whether they come across the world and have to live in a new place and stuff like that. But working predominantly with local artists, for example, research institutions can easily include artists in residence, and it's often something that artists just jump at basically, but which can be really, really not just reaffirming for the researchers, but actually I think can be very, very constructive at times to have to explain what they do, and I've rarely had researchers give me bad feedback, to having artists in residence. The only time you get bad feedback is when the artist does not engage enough with the researcher. I think that's the most predominant problem, is that the researcher feels like they would have wished to have more interaction with the artist or something like that, so. Yeah. But when they really agree to undertake this kind of exchange, I've heard almost just universally positive responses about it.
Yeah, and it's very important to have a residence for artists, a place where they can meet research, or otherwise there is no choice and no place. And yeah,
absolutely, it's true. And especially with cultural funding being more and more difficult to come by, more and more artists are turning to technical disciplines as well to try to get funding, and that's ironically one of the better areas to find funding in right now is through science and technology for artists. Interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any curiosity or questions? How many of you knows about the particular kind of gallery is science gallery?
I knew that because I participated to the hackathon, so we already met.
Yeah. You had to sit through maybe twice this presentation, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Although we appreciate that. I remember your project as well.
This one, so this one was more long and detailed. So, Okay, guys, I think that you just got shocked that we have such an amazing situation coming in Venice. So for the moment, we maybe can stop this this part and we move to the second one, because I think that starting to think about this possible solution for the virtual gallery, it will be the occasion to share some thoughts and talk a little bit about. Before finishing, I really would like to thank you, both of you, to participate. And Erica, if you want to add something.
Well, no, I think Neal said it all, and we're in the development phase, but we already actually, although we don't have a house, we already have done quite a lot of things, and the collaboration with you, Cristina, your students, is really so important for us. Also in the future, it would really be a house for you to explore and to test what you do at the master, and I think we can do really incredible things together.
Well, it's really a pity. I just realized when you were explaining all the incredible number of events that you were planning to do for just for the first exhibition. I didn't know that there were so many, and now I realize why you were so sad when the gallery was closed and you had to cancel so many things. Unfortunately. This is what it is, and we cannot do anything, but we really look forward in the future to follow the program, because even for the students, if they will have, I hope they will have the possibility to spend a little bit of time in Venice. I think that it will be the occasion at least to catch the last part of the program. But anyway, I've seen that you are sending the links of some online events anyway. There is a programming of speeches and talks and other occasion to see what is your program. Okay, I think that this is the moment to maybe try to switch to the discussion. Okay, so I will just for the moment interrupt the registration.